Hello, my name is Mina Shehata and I'm going to be your pharmacist today. How are you doing today?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. So, today I'm here to talk to you about your prescriptions as well as clarify any concerns you may have about your insurance plan. I know insurance can be very complex and very confusing, so I'm here to clear up any questions you may have regarding your insurance or your plans or any certain terminology you may have questions about. So before we begin, can I get you to confirm your name and your date of birth for me?
Sounds good. My name is Jack Brooks and I was born on March 7th, 1999.
Perfect. It all checks out for me. So first thing we're going to start with is talking about premiums. Basically what a premium is you pay a premium every month to your insurance. A lot of people don't know what it is. It's a price that doesn't change every month. It's basically like your monthly subscription for, let's say, a service like Netflix. You pay this every month to basically keep yourself subscribed in your insurance plan. So this is a cost that doesn't change usually every month. It usually stays consistent throughout. And it's just something that you're always going to have to pay no matter what.
Okay, that makes sense. So what am I paying when I go to pick up my prescriptions at the pharmacy?
All right, that's a good question. So basically when you go to your pharmacy, you're going to be paying one of two things, depending on your plan. It's going to be your co-payment or your co-insurance payment. These are similar but have little differences in between. So we'll start with a copay. So basically a copay is going to be a set amount of money that you pay every time. So let's say it's a certain drug that costs $5 after insurance and everything. You're going to pay that $5 throughout and it's not really going to change. It's a set price set by your insurance company. A co-insurance payment is basically like your insurance company sets a certain amount that they're going to cover. Not a dollar-wise amount, but a percent amount. So they may cover 80%. So if your insurance company says they'll cover 80% of a retail price of a drug, your co-insurance is 20%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and where does my deductible factor into all this?
Okay, basically your deductible is what you're going to pay before you start paying these payments. You have to pay off your whole deductible before you start paying your co-payments and co-insurance payments. It basically unlocks your services for the insurance.
Okay, can you give me like an example?
Yeah, of course. So basically, let's say your deductible is $900. So you go at the start of your insurance plan in January to pick up drugs, or prescriptions rather, and you're basically going to be paying out-of-pocket costs until you reach $900. Out-of-pocket costs can be anything from the prescription drugs that you have to pick up, or certain they wouldn't be co-payments, but fees for doctor fees, until you reach this $900, and then the insurance is applied to start covering.
Okay.
Is that a good example for you?
Yeah, and one more question. How does the insurance decide how much I pay for each of these drugs?
Okay, so that will actually lead perfectly to my next point where I talk to you about formulary. So basically what a formulary is like a list of drugs that the insurance company covers. So these drugs are basically tiered up into different sections depending on their use or how common they are and their prices. So basically lower tier drugs are going to be your more generic drugs that are kind of more commonly used and not as expensive to make. And as you move up, the drugs do get more expensive. You may move to more brand over generic. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. Is there like an easy way for me to decide which plan would be best for me?
Of course, yep. So there are star ratings. These ratings basically decide the overall satisfaction and value and how valuable a plan is to you in your certain condition.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So moving on, I see here that you have a prescription for Lipitor that you're going to pick up today. Do you know what the generic version of this is?
I don't even know what a generic drug is.
Oh, okay. Well, this is why I asked you. So basically, not every drug, but a lot of different types of drugs have both a brand name and a generic name. Brand names are usually more expensive than the generic. They do come first as well because the brand manufacturers are the ones that paid for the research as well as the development of the drugs. Meanwhile, the generic ones are usually they usually take the research that has been done by the brand manufacturers and piggyback on those and try to change them up in different ways, whether it's the inactive ingredients or things like this, and make them cheaper, which helps out everyone involved. So overall, there are some brand drugs that there are no generics, such as Eliquis. But a lot of drugs, like the one that you were prescribed today, Lipitor, has a generic name, also known as atorvastatin. So does that kind of clear up the difference between brand and generic for you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clearing that up.
Awesome. So that will lead me into my last point. We're just going to talk about gap coverage. Basically, it's a very important part of insurance. It's something that is confusing to a lot of different customers. So I'm going to make sure you just understand some of the details that go into it. So if and when you are ever involved with it, you know what is going on and exactly what it entails. So basically, to start, what gap coverage is when the prescription drug expenses exceeds the initial coverage limit. So basically, kind of in simpler terms, when you reach a certain amount that your insurance company's been paying on prescriptions, your cost for everything will actually increase for a certain amount of time. So you'll be paying more for almost everything while you are in the gap coverage. But once you do reach a certain amount of money, you are able to exit the gap coverage, and then your costs will actually go lower than what they were originally. So I'll actually just give you a quick example, because that is kind of something that's just kind of tough to comprehend. So let's say you're starting off and you're paying like $50 for every copay of a drug. So then you get into your gap coverage in, let's say, like March. And then you start paying like $100 for every script, and you're like, oh my god, like, it's a lot of money. But you get out of the coverage in like October, you exit the gap coverage. And then after October, you're basically going to be paying, let's say, like $25, so cheaper than you ever were for all your prescription drugs. So that's kind of how gap coverage works. What factors into gap coverage are your out-of-pocket costs, some of your out-of-pocket costs, your co-payments, your co-insurances, as well as your deductible. And yeah, so does that make sense? Anything you want me to clarify about gap coverage?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering why my copays were never consistent, but that makes sense.
Awesome. I'm glad I could help there. So I think I've basically covered everything I wanted to touch base with you on today. So just to make sure you understood what I was getting at, could you just reiterate a couple things back to me? Just explain what we basically touched on today.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So you explained my premium and deductible, what my copays and co-insurances were, and then you talked about how I had to reach my deductible before paying my copays, and then you told me about how drugs from a formulary are split up and broken down into tiers, and I learned about the coverage gap, which may have me paying increased prices for a certain amount of time, but after the gap, the payments are reduced.
Awesome. So it seems like you really soaked up everything that I was able to tell you. So basically, just to conclude it all up, I'm Mina Shehata, the pharmacist here, and you can reach back to us with any questions or information you might have. Thank you.